Hello and welcome to the first episode of Gaffr Tapes, which are Championship Fantasy videos. I'm your co-host, Stoke Gaffer Kyle, and I'm here today with Joel, who finished second in Gaffer last season and knows a lot about the players and clubs from last season. So, hello, Joel.
Hi Kyle, yeah, I'm looking forward to getting stuck in with you this season. And yeah, season 2, looking forward to it.
So, you can follow us on Twitter. I'm at Stoke Gaffer and Joel is at Joels188. So, we'll get straight into it. So, these videos will be predictive videos, which you'll be able to use for planning your Gaffer team next season. So we'll go through the normal things that you do when selecting your fantasy teams from game week to game week. So we'll be looking at fixtures, stats, and playing our teams based on that pretty much. Nothing that you wouldn't use yourself in Gaffer next season. So we're hoping you'll find these videos useful. So kicking off then, it's the new season, the second season of Gaffer. Lots of changes to the game in terms of the scoring, and also the prices, which we'll cover in great detail. So if you want to kick us off, Joel, I think we'll start with the changes from last season, from the boosts, shall we, or the scoring maybe.
Yeah, so
what did you make of the changes to Gaffer? We'll go over them, of course, but those changes have increased the appeal of midfielders across the board. So midfielders will be able to compete with defenders and forwards this season. So you won't need to 5-2-3 every week or 4-3-3. What are your immediate thoughts when you noticed the changes to the scoring, Joel?
I really liked it. Obviously, the big one was midfielders now getting 4 points for an assist as opposed to 3. And also, last season they didn't get, if you're new, they didn't get the clean sheet point like in FPL, but they do this season, which is a good change, I think, because as Kyle said last season, eventually a lot of people were playing 5-2-3. Midfielders weren't really living up to defenders because of the half clean sheets that defenders got awarded. So I think it's really, really good what they've done to make midfielders more viable options. We'll maybe come on to that in a bit more detail later. I'm still wondering whether it won't do enough to take us all the way to playing 3 at the back all the time and 4 midfielders, but I think it's a very welcome change. And also another important change that I think most people who played last season will welcome is the yellow card for forwards has been reduced from -2 to -1 to be back in line with FPL. I think a lot of us didn't like it when our captain, Ivan Toney, got booked in the 90th minute to lose us 4 points. So that's another very welcome change. Yeah.
Not much more to add, really. Midfielders are better to own if you played last season, and prices have increased. So what did you make of the new pricing structure? I know I tweeted when the game first launched that it might lead to more balanced squads and maybe more variation as well.
Yeah, obviously at this point, it looks like the pricing is really, really good. They bumped up a lot of the, especially mid-range players. I think we just got to hope not too many players leave. Last season when that happened, you had your kind of Watkins at 12 million and he left, and then Toney was only coming in at I think it was 9 or 9.5. I can't quite remember. But I think what the guys at Gaffer have done in kind of generally bumping up the prices across the board is it's given us more decisions to make this season, and hopefully there won't be quite as strong a template. they've done really, really well, I think. And just looking at some of the drafts on Twitter the last day or so, they're all so different, and I think it's just really good for the game to see that. There's more variation in our teams. There's lots of different viable options. It's going to be tricky. I don't think it's going to be easy to figure out who to put in our game week 1 teams. That's for sure.
One of my immediate thoughts when I saw the pricing was that the prices are much more squeezed than they were last season. So last season, the budget players that started at teams who played in attacking positions would be very cheap in some cases, sometimes as cheap as 4 million, which anyone who's ever played a £100 million budget 15-player fantasy game would recognise as far too cheap for an attacking midfielder that starts. But Gaffr have addressed that this season, and we should have more balanced squads, more difficult choices to make. So we won't be able to, own all the top players all at once. We'll have to make sacrifices along the way, which is a challenge, and it should lead to more variation of squads, as Joel mentioned there. So yeah, we're both very, very much looking forward to it, and we've both drafted a team which we'll get onto in the initial first stages of first drafts, and I'm sure our teams will change a lot. But moving on then to fixture analysis, and we've used FF Stuff's fixture ticker, which you can personalise. You can toggle teams based on what you think are good fixtures for home and away. So me and Joel have both gone through these toggles and made decisions based on what we know of all the teams, all 24 teams in the Championship, and try to decide which is an easy fixture, which is a medium fixture, and which is a hard fixture. So you'll be able to see the ticker on the screen, and FF Stuff, Frank, the guy behind the website, has done a lot of commendable work for Gaffr already, from a few requests that I've given him on Twitter, and really appreciate the support of Frank. So if you'd like to donate to FF Stuff for all the work that he's done for Gaffr for the game so far, then please do in the top right corner of the website. But fixtures then, are there any clubs first that stand out for you, Joel?
Yeah, there were a couple. First of all, Cardiff, Barnsley at home, Blackpool away, Peterborough away, Millwall at home, Bristol City at home, and Nottingham Forest away. The first 6 fixtures for Cardiff. I think they're very appealing. I think they could be quite defensively solid this season. And out of all the teams, I think they probably have one of the best starts to the season. Another one is Bournemouth. Obviously, they've got a really tricky first game against West Brom. They've just come down from the Premier League. But after that, you can see a really nice run. Nottingham Forest, Bristol City, Blackburn, Hull, Barnsley. What do you think? Are there any other teams that stood out to you?
I think the ones that stood out were the relegated clubs. I think there aren't too many tricky fixtures in there, apart from when Sheffield United play West Brom in game week 3. But apart from that, I think you can own players from 3 relegated clubs and be fairly confident that they'll get returns. Although Bournemouth might have improved under Scott Parker when it comes to the start of the season. Scott Parker, likes his teams to be solid defensively, as we saw from Fulham at times last season. They had a very good XGA, which helped them to compete in in large parts of the season, at least defensively, if not going forward and scoring goals. So we might see Bournemouth improve, who play West Brom actually on a relegated team on the first game of the season. So immediately that's the fixture that stands out to me. Who you going to back for that? Are you going to go all in on West Brom, or are you just going to have one or two, and then reassess after that fixture? But apart from that, I think Swansea and Cardiff, as you've mentioned, have good fixtures. Ethan Moore did very well for me last season, so I'll be starting with him based on those fixtures that you've mentioned. Pretty much all good fixtures in there, apart from Barnsley on the first game of the season, which I'm not sure which way that will go at the moment with Barnsley's new manager. But we'll see how it pans out, and I think you kind of learn things game by game in the Championship. A lot changes throughout the season in even a short space of time. Also, I think a lot of the clubs are evenly matched again this season, so it will be very interesting and difficult in terms of fixtures to analyse. But that's why we're here, and we're trying to make sense of the fixtures for you and help you to pick your teams based on fixture difficulty. So on to the pricing of some of the premium assets for next season. So we're going to look at goalkeepers first of all, and starting with premiums. So the top end of goalkeeping, 6.5 is a lot to spend on a goalkeeper, but as we saw from last season, you can get return on that investment if you pick the right keeper. Bialkowski was one of the top scoring goalkeepers from last season. I think he finished second or third in points for goalkeepers, and Begovic was up there as well, who comes in at 6 million, although he could leave Bournemouth this summer. So are there any other standouts for you, Joel, from say the relegated teams or clubs that maybe didn't perform so well last season?
In terms of premium goalkeepers, not really. I'm not sure whether... I know kind of someone like a Freddie Woodman was quite a good option last season because Swansea was so solid defensively, but I think a bit like FPL, especially with half clean sheets points as well, I'm not convinced whether an expensive goalkeeper is a really good use of budget. Some of the lower league goalkeepers can rack up the saves, especially when we've got boosts like cheapest keepers, which we'll probably come on to. But yeah, I mean, you've mentioned Begovic. He was really, really good for saves. He was only 5 million at the start of last season, I believe. So he's got an understandable price hike. But if he does leave, then watch out for that, because we might have a relatively cheap starting Bournemouth keeper. Sam Johnston, I guess, could be the pick of the bunch. I mean, West Bromwich Albion, tend to be fairly solid defensively, and I expect them to be solid in this coming season. They might keep a lot of clean sheets. So Sam Johnston maybe one to look out for, although, again, he's another player that could very easily move to a Premier League club. He's easily good enough to be leaving the division. But really, I think more interesting are some of the cheaper goalkeepers.
Yeah, and I think that comes with the territory of price increases. Maybe we'll be forced into picking those cheaper keepers and trying to find value with maybe a goalkeeper rotation, or one cheap starting goalkeeper and maybe a 4.0 that doesn't start for the club. So, like you, I don't focus too much on the premiums, but if I had to pick one, I think it would probably be Begovic. As I've said already on the fixture analysis, Bournemouth might be a tricky fixture defensively next season, with Scott Parker taking over there, and I think he will make them tough to break down defensively, which might lead to Begovic keeping more clean sheets, more half clean sheets. And he was already a fantastic goalkeeper to own last season. He might not make as many saves, but clean sheets will improve for him surely if he does stay. But just on the transfer market then, so Aaron Ramsdale and Sam Johnston will both be in demand by Premier League clubs for sure, based on what they've done in the Premier League in the past. So if either of those leave, then the backup keepers from those might be good options. Button at West Brom is 6 million, so 0.5 less than Johnston. And Sheffield United, I think, are an interesting club to mention with the goalkeepers, because if Ramsdale leaves, then again you save 0.5 for Wes Foderingham, who has a decent experience, at least in the Scottish Premier League, so maybe an even higher league than the Championship, with his time at Rangers. So 5.5 for a Sheffield United goalkeeper might be a good investment under Slavisa Jukanovic and all of the names that we know from the Premier League in the past couple of seasons. But like you, Joel, I'm agreed that I think I'll look towards the budget keepers, which are 5.0 and below, and Phillips from Cardiff with their fixture run to start the season in a good defensive team under Mick McCarthy, and I think he'll make a lot of saves as well as keep clean sheets. So it's always good to get that mix of saves and half clean sheets. And of course, I have to mention, as a Stoke fan, our goalkeepers, we kept 21 clean sheets last season, which was only just below Watford and Swansea, who had phenomenal clean sheet records last season. And Watford almost broke the record for the fewest goals conceded in a Championship season. I think they were 1 or 2 goals off breaking that record last season, but Stoke weren't too far behind. So yeah, I mean, Swansea might be interrupted this time round with the injury to Connor Roberts and with Freddie Woodman leaving, but I think whichever goalkeeper starts for Stoke will be a good pick going into next season, all bias aside. On to defenders. As I've said, Connor Roberts was injured in the Euros, unfortunately, so we'll miss a few months of the start of the season. But Jake Bidwell, you'll remember from owning last season, who was, in parts of the season at least, the star of the show. Is that fair to say in terms of defenders?
Especially at the start of the season, I'd say. An interesting one on Bidwell. Towards the end of the season, he was being replaced in the team by Ryan Manning. I believe he is still at Swansea, isn't he, Ryan Manning? He's not listed as a Swansea player on the team.
Swansea signed him on a free contract near the start of last season. He should be listed as a Swansea defender. I think he was a midfielder last season, but he's been reclassified this time around. So
yes, it's just something to be aware of. I think Bidwell, in theory, is the better player, certainly in an attacking sense, and will probably play most of the games, but I would still say he's a bit of a rotation risk. I don't know if you'd agree with that, Kyle.
He could be. I've spoken to a Swansea fan about this, who is a club correspondent with the EFL Fantasy, podcast that Jamie does, and he says that Bidwell will be first choice, but there could be some rotation with Ryan Manning at left back. But if Bidwell does get a run in the team, he's a great asset to own in Gaffr because he's so attacking. He loves to get forward and provide assists and maybe score 1 or 2 goals as well. And with Swansea's clean sheet record, they very rarely concede more than once in a game. So they're always good for at least a half clean sheet under Steve Cooper. So again, I think I might look towards Swansea at some point, but maybe not straight away. With Woodman leaving, and just feel that maybe they won't continue to keep as many clean sheets into next season, but that remains to be seen. In terms of then the relegated clubs from the Premier League, are there any names that stand out to you from players that were relegated last season?
Yeah, well, with the new manager at Sheffield United, Jovanovic, we don't know whether they're going to stick with the back three with wing backs or whether they'll change system. But George Baldock and Enda Stevens love to get forward, so they could be potentially good options. We saw last season in the Premier League, not last season, the season before, the season where they managed to finish top half. They provided a good amount of attacking returns. And they could really take to the Championship, I would say. Another one that stood out to me is actually Daniel Furlong. Is his first Darnell Furlong? Sorry, I think I've got his name right. From West Brom, I think he's only 6 million. He's their right back. Again, I see West Brom being quite defensively sound, and he provided 4 assists last season in the Premier League, which is not too bad for a relegated team. That could well be a player that gets forward and has the chance of getting some assists. Those are the ones that have stood out to me. Are there any others that you would suggest, Kyle?
Well, something to consider with the relegated clubs is the new manager that has taken over. So all 3 of the relegated teams have new managers. West Brom have Valerian Ismail, who was Barnsley manager last season and was responsible for their fantastic season, both defensively and going forward. But they were always good for set-piece goals. So the West Brom centre-backs might be worth looking at. I know that Ajayi has a good set-piece record from being in the Championship the last time West Brom were in the division 2 seasons ago now. I think he scored 6 goals in that time. So West Brom might be, good defensive unit next season under Ishmael. And he plays a system which allows wing-backs to get forward. So, as you've mentioned, Darnell Furlong has a good record for assists, playing in a back 4 as a fullback. So those numbers will only improve, you'd think, playing as a right wing-back where he gets more licence to go forward and less defensive responsibilities. So Darnell Furlong at 6 million, I think, is a good option, but I find it tough to weigh up the difference between a wing back in a wing back system and a centre back who has a good set piece record. It's always difficult to compare. Thinking back to Barnsley last season when Michael Hellick was always in the right place for set pieces and had a knack of winning headers in the area, let's say, and I think scored 4 or 5 goals. I have the stats.
He moved up on bonus as well a lot of the time, didn't he?
They played a lot of aerial crosses from dead ball situations, which a lot of teams wouldn't cross from in from set piece situations. West Brom will be good for clean sheets as well as attacking returns. You'd think with Ishmael there, who likes to play this high pressing style. He likes his wing backs to get forward, and he likes to get crosses into the box and cause havoc in the box for opposition defences. Just on Ishmael then. Scored 5 goals and made 1 assist, and Matt Anderson scored 1 goal and assisted 5, and you can imagine all of those coming from set pieces. So maybe that will translate to West Brom. Kyle Bartley is good from set pieces, but the one for me that stands out is Semi Ajayi, who is in my team. But anyway, enough talk of West Brom and Valérien Ismaël and how good West Brom could be next season. Or is it? Because moving on to midfielders, and a player that stands out straight away is Matthias Pereira. Is he in your team, Joel? I've seen him in a lot of drafts.
He is currently.
I've seen him called essential, and I've seen people say that you can't go without Matthias Pereira, and I think we need to explain why that is. Firstly, so for me, it's the assists. So midfielders get 4 points for assists, which is 1 more point than any other, and Pereira was the top assister the last time West Brom were in the Championship, which kind of explains his 11 million price tag to me. And he likes to get goals as well. He scored 8 goals in 1920. So definitely one to look out for. So why is he in your draft then, Joel?
Yeah, he's in my draft because I know last time he was in the Championship 2 seasons ago, he absolutely, he was their talisman. He I can't remember how many assists he got exactly, but I think it was at least 20. Correct me if I'm wrong on that. He also, I think, finished the season quite well for West Brom at times last season. He's their creative spark, isn't he? Everything goes through him, and if anyone is going to replicate what Emi Buendia did in Gaffr last year, I think it could be him. However, I do think it is a bit too soon to call a player essential. The Championship's an unpredictable league. There's so many unknown factors, changes of managers. Pereira might not even be in the division come game week 1. So. There's a lot of different factors at play here, and I don't think essential is the right word at this point, but I think he's going to be in a lot of teams. He's in my team currently just because of that assist potential he has. He's obviously playing for a team that we expect to go to get promoted, I think if anyone can do it, he can.
Yeah, I'm just gonna say that Dan Ashby was, without naming names, was the man that called Pereira essential. So I'll hold him to that, and we'll come back to that in a few months' time, maybe. He might be right. He might be essential, as Buendia was at times last season. But we shall see. Elsewhere, so West Brom have a lot of premium options in midfield. Grady Diangana is one of them, who is 2 million cheaper than Pereira. So if you feel that you can go without Matthias Pereira, then Diangana, who goals and 7 assists last time in the Championship, might be good value to your team. And Alex Mowat, who was at Barnsley under Villeray and Ishmael last season, who is a set-piece expert, has signed for West Brom, so he might be a tasty option as well. So, yeah, I mean, I think we ran down West Brom's options. From other clubs then, Dan Juma, do we expect him to stay?
I'd be surprised if he's still at Bournemouth.
He does stay. He's got to be in your team. Then can you afford Pereira and Dan Juma? So there's going to be difficult decisions to be made if all of the midfielders stay. So, Dan Juma, do you think he's worth 10 million?
Oh, 100%, yeah. When Bournemouth were on it, well, I thought Bournemouth were quite a patchy team last season. They had that dreadful spell that led up to Jason Tindall's sacking, but we saw in spells during the first half of the season, and in particular when they were pushing for their playoff place at the back end of the season, they were scoring for fun, and Dan Juma was always involved. He was, I would say, actually essential at the end of last season, and I think his price bump up to 10 million is completely justified. He's involved in everything that they do from an attacking standpoint, and yeah, especially thinking about how Solanke is a bit of a, his role in the team is a bit more creative as a forward, I would say, than a lot of others. He actually does well to create chances for the likes of Danjuma and Brooks and Stanislas. So yeah, I think if he stays, it's going to be very hard to look past him. I've actually, in my first draft, I've kind of operated under the assumption that he's going to leave. But if he stays, I'm going to have a lot more of a headache than come game week 1, definitely.
And if he does leave, as Ben Rama, a similar kind of player at Brentford, left for West Ham last season after being priced as one of the premiums, it opens out the option of Jed Wallace at Millwall, who's on all their set pieces and penalties and could play out of position as a forward in some games, depending on the formation. So that it kind of explains why Wallace is priced at 10 million. Was there a time you owned Jed Wallace? I know I did at times near the start of the season before moving to Buendia, maybe too late in the end. But did you find Wallace to be a good asset at that price last season? He was the same price last season.
Not for me. I think I did own him at the very start. I think for maybe only 2 or 3 game weeks. Certainly didn't have him for very long. I just thought he was overpriced. Millwall don't tend to score all that many goals, and I know he had ridiculous numbers the previous season, which is why he was priced so high. But he just wasn't replicating that form. And I think if he was 8 million or so, he would have been a bit more of an option. And I know he was popular with some people in the community, but I don't think by the time I sold him, probably game week 4 or 5, it was around that sort of time. He didn't enter my team again all season.
Yeah, I think I only owned him because of that potential of being on penalties. Even though penalties only count for 3 points in Gaffr, but I think just the opportunity to score those goals from midfield just seemed too good to turn down even at that price, being on penalties. But we'll see how Millwall perform and if they manage to score more goals than they did last season. And if they do so, Jed Wallace will be a good option for sure. Forwards, and the 3 standout options are as expected, priced accordingly to their reputation in the Championship, and I pretty much expected these 3 players to be the 3 outstanding highest priced forwards. Dominic Solanke at Bournemouth, who Joel mentioned plays in more of a creative role, and I expect this to continue under Scott Parker, who likes to play a false nine in a 4-3-3. Alexander Mitrovic, if he stays at Fulham, is a fantastic striker at this level. He scores bags full of goals in the Championship. He loves the Championship and has a great record of scoring. So if he stays at Marco Silva's team, he could be a good option again. I'd expect him to score around 25 goals next season. And also Adam Armstrong, who managed to get three hat-tricks, I want to say, last season. And when he was in form, he really was in form. You know, he'd go... he'd score 5 goals in 2 games, for example, as he did towards the end of last season, which bumped me up the rankings late on. Then further down the list, are there any that particularly stand out as being good value below the premiums, Joel?
Well, I think the Sheffield United forwards, obviously there's so many of them and they're under a new manager, and it's very uncertain who is going to start, but I think there's some great value there. Obviously we've got McBurney 9.5, McGoldrick at 9, I think Brewster's maybe 8.5. I think whoever starts and nails down that spot up front for Sheffield United could be really, really good value, particularly McGoldrick. As soon as I saw his price was 9 million, my eyes lit up. He was probably their best player last season in what was just such a terrible, terrible season. And I would be surprised if he wasn't in the team. I think it's probably a bit too early to go with a Sheffield United striker from Game Week 1 just because they've got so many different options. But, it could. I do think they could provide really good value if they can perform to a good level this season.
I forgot to mention, actually, which of the 3 premiums that you prefer of Solanke, Mitrovic and Armstrong. 3 very different centre forwards, but in terms of Gaffr, who do you think will get the most points next season?
Now, I've got Solanke in my team at the moment, although mostly because I'm assuming Armstrong's going to leave, and Mitrovic was obviously out of favour at times last season, so I would want to wait and see on him. I think, though, if Mitrovic did nail down a starting spot under Marcus Silva, he's a very attacking manager. I support Everton. I remember him from his Everton days being a manager who, let's just say, put a lot more emphasis on attack than defence. I think if Mitrovic nails down that starting spot, I would probably say he'd score the most points over the course of the season.
So would Mitrovic suit the style of a manager like Marco Silva? Does he like to, get centre forwards balls into the box?
Yeah, potentially not. He may well adapt to the squad that he's got in front of him, but Mitrovic is more of a flat track bully type of forward, and potentially not a typical Marco Silva forward, but his record in the Championship speaks for himself, and he's clearly capable, even under a manager like him. So I don't think that would be something to put me off. It's just more whether his lack of minutes last season is going to become an issue, and whether they bring anyone else in, any of the strikers in. Josh Maja was on loan, wasn't he? So he won't be around in the Championship this season unless they re-sign him. Is that right?
Yeah, I think Mitrovic might stay by default. The club might not get the offer that they want for him, and he might just stay for another season in the Championship. And I remember from owning him in 1920, when he scored 26 goals, he was a good striker to own, particularly in good fixtures. As you've said, he's very much a flat track bully. and he can also get goals when you don't expect him to. 26 goals in the Championship 2 seasons ago was more than Patrick Bamford, for example, and I think he was top scorer that season. So he's only 26 as well. I think of him as being much older than he really is, Mitrovic, and he's still got a few years left in him, and I'm sure his legs are still fresh from hardly playing last season. He could be someone that I'll look at when Fulham get going. Maybe not from the start at that price. For me, I don't own any of those three premiums because there's so many mitigating factors to them doing well from the start of the season. But I think I'll have a plan to get one of them in if they hit the ground running. So we'll go on to our teams then. We won't talk too much more on pricing, but I think we've covered all of the premium assets there and a few others. Shall we go into your draft to start, Joel? So what have you come up with?
Should I show the whole team? I think I will.
Yeah, sure.
I just lost you for a second on the audio. Do a bit of editing. Anyway, okay, here is my current squad. Hopefully you can see I'll scroll down to the bench in a minute, actually. In goal, I've gone for, mainly Travers of Bournemouth, just having heard the rumours that Begovic is going to leave. Bear in mind, this is just a first draft. I'm making a lot of assumptions that, may not turn out to kind of what I think is going to happen may not actually end up happening. So this is going to change an awful lot over the coming weeks as we go further towards game week 1. But yes, I've gone for Travers and I've gone for Wilson of Coventry as my backup keeper. I believe both the keepers in the game, Wilson and Moore of Coventry, are 4 million. And there is a potential there to have a 4 million starting goalkeeper because I think they just signed Moore. And so I've gone with him just in case he plays, but I just think 5 million for Travers of Bournemouth if he does turn out to be the starting keeper in the end would be really, really good value. But there are other keepers that I think I will probably go for a different 5 million keeper if for some reason Travers isn't nailed. Keepers like Bentley of Bristol City will be good for saves, although I do have a Bristol City defender already. Collins of Barnsley is 5 million, Dieng of QPR, all fairly decent teams, keepers that may get a decent amount of saves. So that's my goalkeepers. Moving on to the defence. Initially, until kind of this morning when I was having another mess around with my draft, I was only on one premium defender, that being Jake Bidwell, but I've kind of shifted over onto two, just further reflecting on the extent to which the midfielder improvements of the 4 points for an assist and the extra clean sheet point actually improve them. I think it will do a good job of improving them, but I looked at the top assist chart last season, and there were only I think 4 or 5 midfielders that had over 10 assists, Buendia being the most with 16, and not a lot of players racked up more than 10 assists. So that's only really the best midfielders racking up an extra 10 points, which was maybe perhaps not enough to bridge the gap. So I still think there's scope to be playing 4 at the back. Probably the days of 5-2-3 are probably gone, but I've decided to start with 4 at the back for now. Obviously, like I say, just the first draft. So Jake Bidwell, as we've mentioned, we've talked about him before, gets really far forward when Swansea are playing their 3 at the back system. He chipped in with a fair few goals and assists last season. and with Roberts injured at the moment, he looks like a good bet. I know Kyle said he wasn't sure if they'll keep up their defensive record of last season. I think he could be right there, but I think there's something to be said about covering different price points at the start of the season. So, if he doesn't perform, I can easily make a downgrade there. Furlong, I mentioned him earlier. Will play for a very solid West Brom team. Will hopefully get forward a lot. Just an extra bit of cover for a really strong defensive team. 6 million isn't too bad, I think. And G of Cardiff, so as I mentioned before, their fixtures for the first 6 or 7 games look really, really good. And he's only 5 million. So I think there's another Cardiff defender that's 5 million, the rest were 5.5 or 6. Morrison was 6. But Ng, only 5 million for who I think should be a starting Cardiff defender is fairly cheap, I think, under Nick McCarthy. He's a coach who likes to be solid first and foremost. So I thought he would provide good value, at least for the first part of the season. And then I've got 2 4.5 defenders, so Viner starting here, and Lee Wallace. Lee Wallace surprised us a lot last season. I think he's 34. He was definitely 34 last season. Maybe he's turned 35 now. But he really got forward in the second half of last season. He was in a lot of teams. He's just been put in as 4.5 again this season, which I think could provide very good value. So I've got him and Viner. That could change if I find a good rotation between 2 different 4.5 defenders. I haven't delved into rotation pairs and all that fun stuff just yet. But for now, Viner, hopefully under Nigel Pearson, they will strengthen a bit at the back. They were pretty dire for a lot of last season, Bristol City. So two 4.5 defenders. Anyway,
I must say, Joel, I'm surprised not to see Morrison in your team. One of your stars from last season. How many goals he scored? Do you think the price difference between NG and Sean Morrison is a little too high to justify paying that extra for Sean Morrison?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I have really good memories of Sean Morrison. I owned him. I think he scored 2 goals in 2 games. I had him, and he definitely played a big part in getting me up to the top of the leaderboard for a while. I think when you've got the likes of a couple of West Brom defenders who are also 6 million, who are probably going to keep more clean sheets most likely, and when you've got NG at only 5, I think. As we've mentioned before, the way the pricing is being done this season, it's hard enough as it is to squeeze in all the players you want. And I just, feel like saving that extra million, going for G, that extra million can be used elsewhere. So that was my thinking. But yes, I do have very good memories of Sean Morrison. He was getting on the end of a lot of set pieces last season. And that is a good thing to note if you do want a centre-back who has really good set-piece threat. Sean Morrison at 6 million for Cardiff is definitely one of those players. So, moving on to midfield, as we've spoken about before, I've got Pereira. I'm not going to say anything more on him. I think we've covered the reason why he's going to be in so many drafts. Now, Caballero of Fulham stood out to me straight away when I was looking at the Fulham prices. At times he played up front last season. He played very advanced. Fulham will be a very attacking team under Marco Silva. I don't see why he wouldn't be first choice. And I've taken a punt on him to start with. I'll await more information in pre-season, but I think if he starts, he could be very good value for one of the best attacking sides in the division, as we'd expect Fulham to be. And then I've also included Philip Billing. He came to the forefront in the back end of last season for Bournemouth, where he played a more advanced role. Kind of a number 8 verging on number 10 at times, and he was chipping in with an awful lot of goals and assists, more than, I think a lot of us who didn't follow the Championship last season, a lot of people who didn't follow it last season would associate Billing. They think he's more of a defensive-minded midfielder from his days at Huddersfield, but yeah, he played in a lot more of an advanced role towards the end of last season, and he was actually. I didn't ever own him, but those who did will have made up a lot of ground, and he's 7 million, and around that price point, especially with Bournemouth's opening fixtures, I think he could be good value to start with. Just going down to my bench, I've included Ajaria of Reading at 6.5 million. Obviously, with Elise having left for Palace, I think he could potentially provide good value. It's really tricky to find cheap midfielders, around the kind of 5.5 to 6.5 million range. But I've got him in there for now. And Ward, last sub of Peterborough. I'm not going to take credit for finding this out, but he seems to slip through the net a little bit. He got 5 goals and 13 assists for Peterborough last season. A starting 4.5 million mid seems to be the perfect bench fodder to me. And then up front, I have got Solanke. Again, Bournemouth's opening fixtures are really good, and if Bournemouth can hit the ground running, they'll score a lot of goals, and he'll be involved a lot as well. Last season, again, Solanke was a player that, if you owned him at the right time, when Bournemouth were on a good run, he was really, really good. Kiefer Moore at 10 million as well. So 2 quite expensive strikers, but those fixtures for Cardiff are hard to pass up. And I think I'll probably go with him from the start for that reason. And finally, Clark Harris of Peterborough. He scored 31 goals for Peterborough last season. Pretty much matching what Tony did for Peterborough before he moved to Brentford. And he's only 6 million, and he just seems to be a really good enabler at the moment. If he can take to Championship football, I think he could be a good shout. You never know. He could be, players like him in fantasy, thinking about like a Timu Puki or an Ivan Toney going up to the Premier League. You don't know whether they're going to live up to the numbers that they produced in the division below, but I think he could be a good punt at that price. So yeah, that's what I've got so far. Like I said, that will most likely have changed many, many times by the time we get to game week 1. But yeah, should we move on to yours then, Kyle?
Yeah, good starting point. I think you've covered a lot of the main price points from different positions, and it seems like you've left yourself flexible to change as well. So yeah, it's a good team to start with as a first draft. So just to mention, I've not seen your draft before, Joel. So I was looking at it, without knowing who you picked and without being influenced. But you've made me think of different players to what I've seen already on Twitter, and who has stood out to me from doing my own research. So muchly appreciated. Particularly Ward from Peterborough. But we have 3 of the same defenders, which I'll get onto, and 2 of the same forwards. So I think we're on a similar track, which is good news to me, being on the same wavelength as someone who finished second last season. So yeah, onto my team, and the 2 goalkeepers. I have spent a good chunk of my funds. I had a bit left over to start with. I think I went more budget, and I got in a 4.5, I think, and a 5.0 to start with, and then I realised I had funds left over to invest in goalkeepers, but that might change as players become more appealing over pre-season, and with transfer news, everything changes on a daily basis. So my 2 goalkeepers, I think, will change for sure. But at the moment, it's Adam Davis at Stoke, who I think will be first choice, although Joe Bursick has represented England at under 20 level and was part of two promotions last season. One from I can't remember who it was. I think League Two maybe, and then I know he was involved in the Peterborough team that were promoted, and can't remember the other one, but he was involved in two promotions, I think from League One, or might be League Two, I'm not too sure. But Adam Davis, I think, will be first choice. That remains to be seen. I will be checking lineups from pre-season to clarify that. And Alex Smithies is my other keeper to be in a rotation pair with Adam Davis. The good fixtures will mean that I might favour Smithies more often than not, but it's good to have Adam Davis there if there is a fixture that I think is particularly better, and Davis becomes a better option than Smithies. So my defenders, I've mentioned a couple of them already. Semi Ajayi at 6.5 I think will live up to that price tag with goals he's likely to get from set pieces. Darnell Furlong is a West Brom player that I was interested right from when West Brom were relegated. He was a player that I was, my attention was drawn to him straight away because of how well he is in an attacking sense, and I think 6 million is a good price. I think that's maybe 0.5 less than what I would have priced him at. So for that reason alone, I think he's good value, and that's part of the reason I decided to go with the West Brom double up of Ajayi and Furlong. Like you, I have Wallace from QPR, a player who was in form towards the end of last season, if you believe in form, and yeah, he consistently he was consistently in the bonus. He was a player that when QPR kept a clean sheet, he seemed to get maximum bonus. So that's something to consider when you're picking your defenders. I think I might be right in saying that wing backs are better than centre backs at bonus, but then if you consider the goal threat that centre backs have from set pieces, centre backs can be good to own as well, because goals also lead to bonus. So it's a difficult one to weigh up. But I think I've got a good mix here of wing backs, full backs, and Ajayi's set piece threat. So Perry and G is another wing back who plays in Mick McCarthy's Cardiff, and got a few assists last season, and considered owning him, but the price difference between him and Sean Morrison wasn't that much to tempt me to Perry and G. But this season there's £1 million difference, so I've opted for Perry and G this time round, who is a right wing back for Cardiff, and also a right wing back or a right back in a back four is Bree at Luton, and again, he's a player that gets a lot of bonus, like Wallace. So yeah, he's good to own, and 4.5 for a player who I presume at this early stage is nailed to be right back for Luton. Having spoken to the Luton correspondent for the EFL podcast, seems like good value, and I expect Luton to have a similar season to last season when they finished comfortably mid-table and managed to get many clean sheets home and away. So I expect that to continue under Nathan Jones. My midfielders, and there's a notable exception here, as I've mentioned, Matthias Pereira. Maybe he is essential, maybe he isn't, but we'll see. I don't own him currently because based on the new system that they're likely to play with the 3-4-3 that Ishmael favours, I don't see an obvious place for him in that team that he's going to thrive in and get the sort of numbers that he did 2 seasons ago under Bilic when he played in an advanced central midfield role. His place in Ishmael's team would be on one of the wings, maybe the right wing, unless maybe he adapts the system to a 3-5-2 and plays Pereira behind 2 forwards, which I find unlikely because of how well the system worked in the Championship when he was Barnsley manager. And for that reason, Pereira isn't in my team, but Grady Diangana, who is 2 million less expensive, is in my team, who is a winger and is likely to start for West Brom next season. And Alex Mowat is the central midfielder in that same team, and you'll notice that I've got 4 West Brom players, and I was quite shrewd yesterday in picking Mowat when he was still listed as a Barnsley player before all the transfers were released onto the game. So it might be an advantage, it might not be. Bournemouth on the first game of the season is a tricky one, at least in an attacking sense. So Elias Chair at 7.5 I think is very good value.
Bad memories of him.
Sorry?
Bad memories of Elias Chair from last season. But yeah, carry on.
Well, I think personally that Chair can have a breakout season this season. I think having looked at the stats tables, throughout last season, he was always high up on chances created, key passes, and those metrics, but it never converted to actual returns, and he didn't live up to he couldn't contribute what his metrics would suggest he was able to, unfortunately. But this season that might be different. He's playing in a system that gets the best out of him, playing in the number 10, but with 2 strikers to feed. I expect him to get at least double figures in assists next season. So to me, Elias Chair is great value at 7.5, playing behind a front 2 of Charlie Austin and who's the other centre forward? It's
Lyndon Dykes.
Lyndon Dykes, yes. So yeah, playing behind them, I think he'll offer both of those centre forwards high quality service for them to score. Bobby Reid of Fulham is another player that instantly jumped out at me when Fulham were relegated. So yeah, Bobby Reid at 7.5, and if Mitrovic leaves, he'll probably become the centre forward, or at least the false 9 in Fulham's system under Marco Silva. So who likes to play one centre forward and 2 wingers? So yeah, that's a wait and see for me. He might not be nailed, as I think they have wingers that might be preferred to Reid, but that remains to be seen in pre-season. And Willock So this is Joe Willock's brother, Lee Willock, I think I'm right in saying, who was on loan at QPR last season and performed very well for them, and think they extended his loan or maybe signed him in the end. After he played so well for them last season. So yeah, I mean, Willock is a player that can play in multiple positions. He could play as one of the forwards. He could play as a winger. But at 6 million, I think you've got to take a chance on a player like that. Somehow fitting into a formation in a team because of the quality of player that they are. And I expect him to get a few returns in QPR's opening 6 fixtures, which I think are quite favourable, which is why I've decided to triple up on 3 QPR players. And my 3 forwards then. So Kiefer Moore, with Cardiff's good fixtures to start the season, I think is one of the players that has potential to be a player that can haul for you as a captain in those fixtures where he's expected to score and being on penalties, being so good in the air as he is, and playing in a team that like to get crosses into the box to Moore, similar to the way Wales play with wing backs. Gets the best out of Moore for Cardiff. So for 10 million, 1.0 less than the likes of Solanke and Mitrovic, who I'm unsure on at this stage, but that might change. I think is a good price for a player of his ability playing at the Euros. So he was a player that I owned at times last season and was rewarded with many goals and bonus to come with it. I also own Josh Koroma sort of midway through last season, and he's a player who likes to shoot a lot. He was very high up in the shots per game and shots on target metrics last season, and that was a player that isn't afraid to shoot, which stands out for me. Some people might not see that as an important factor in choosing a player, but a player that likes to shoot is a good fantasy asset, and it shows in the bonus as well. He can get bonus without scoring at times, because he's capable of having so many shots on target in a game, even if he doesn't score. And at 8 million, it's a chance, it's a gamble that you can take. Even though he plays for Huddersfield, who aren't one of the top half teams, he's a player that can get you a double figure point haul if he does find the back of the net. And Clark Harris again is another of the players that we both agree on. And 31 goals last season for Peterborough. He was never present for them in League One. And at 6 million, I think it's hard to turn down. Some people might not take that risk with a player like him, but it can translate. Scoring goals in League One means that you're a good centre forward, and scoring at such a consistent rate, as prolific as he is likely to at least, you'd think, reach 15 league goals over next season. So he's a player that you can leave in your team, maybe bench in a difficult fixture, and maybe play a 3-5-2 or a 4-4-2, which is my plan. In terms of team structure, I think I'm pretty flexible, although at the moment I'm short of that big premium asset who costs upwards of 10.5. So I will look to maybe save some budget. I've currently got 0.5 in the bank, so saving 0.5 here or there won't be too difficult to be able to upgrade, say, a Moore to a Mitrovic, or I could downgrade Mowat to a 6.5 and go for Diangana and upgrade Diangana to Mateus Pereira. So that's my team, and I'm looking forward to playing around with it and seeing how I can improve it over the pre-season.
It's great as well, isn't it, that one of the things that makes Gaffr so great is it's kind of fresh every season, because all the best assets tend to leave for the Premier League, so we don't have to think about picking Tony and Pookie and Buendia. I just one of the things I've enjoyed just tinkering around is my team is completely unrecognisable from last season, and it's definitely one of the positives about the game.
Yeah, and variation as well. Team variation seems a bigger thing than it was last season. You have to really go digging into some clubs that maybe you didn't have to do so much last season in order to find the value. I think value is more of an important factor in considering a player for your team in this upcoming season. So yeah, so it's all positive, and based on the same topic of talking about what's so good about Gaffr, what we haven't focused on is a big draw for some players of other games to this game, which is the boosts.
Yes, yeah. So I've just got these up, and so if you're new to Gaffr, the boosts are they're my favourite part of the game. In fact, they were the biggest draw for me when I first saw it advertised on Twitter last summer. And so how it works is you get the season split into thirds. So from game weeks 1 to 15, you get given 6 boosts, of which you choose 3. And then in game week 16, we'll be given a fresh set of 6. And once again, we will choose 3 for that third of the season. And then from game week 31, we get our third and final set. Each set will be different. Some will carry through. For example, Overhaul was in all 3 sets of boosts last season. But some that you'll see for the first third of the season, you won't see again. Just to quickly run through what all of them are and what they all do. So we have Overhaul, this first one here, which is just like your wildcard in FPL, unlimited transfers. And then secondly, we have Park the Bus. So I really enjoyed this one last season, and this was in the first and second set last season. You get double points for your defenders, but no captain multipliers. The fact that you get half clean sheets in this game made this boost really, really good. Whereas I think if we didn't have that, a lot of people wouldn't play it because it's just so risky when a clean sheet wipeout could ruin your whole boost. Thirdly, we have Goal Fest. So this one, it'd be good to just talk about the intricacies of exactly what it does, so there's no confusion. So each goal that you get in your team, including the substitutes, gets you an extra 5 points. So what this doesn't mean is if you've captained, let's say I captain Solanke in game week 1 and I play my Goal Fest and he scores, the bonus from the Goal Fest boost that I get will be 5 points rather than 10, even though he's my captain. This includes penalties, so 5 points for a penalty as well. So there's an interesting strategy that some people did last season where they would put on their bench their best attacking players, and they would. So, for example, they put Tony on the bench, and even if he scored, you'd get the bonus 5 points, but not the other points. I'm not actually sure if that's a good strategy. I think there's one point. I think when I played Goalfest, I benched Tony, and he got 14 points, and I only got his bonus points for the goal, but not the rest of them, and it can cost you. But it's an interesting strategy, and I can understand why people did it if they're thinking they could get as many players out as possible, so to speak. So yeah, that's Goalfest. Then we have this is multi-captain. No, it isn't. This is away days. Sorry. This is a crazy boost. We only saw this in the final third of last season, but no captain multipliers, but you get double points for every single away fixture, which means you could end up with essentially 11 captains in your team. And if this fell in a double game week, I don't think there will be any in this first third of the season. But if that fell in a double game week, you could get a lot of away fixtures. There was one Swansea double game week last season where they played away twice, and people were able to get kind of 14 fixtures doubled up. So yeah, there's away days, and then we have got multi-captain. So one thing we haven't mentioned is that vice captain also gets a 1.5 multiplier bonus in this game. So vice captain choices are even more important. But with the multi-captain boost, you get double points for your captain, your vice captain, and your emergency captain. And finally, this is probably my favourite, Jeepers Keepers. Now, we'll maybe go on and talk about which boosts are going to be the strongest in a second, but last season, in a double game week, this boost was incredible. I played it on the Wickham goalkeeper, Stockdale, and I think it was Dieng no, it wasn't, it was Collins, the Barnsley keeper, in a double game week. So both goalkeepers score points. You get essentially double points for the clean sheets, so an extra 2 per half clean sheet, and 3 points per save, which is absolutely mad. So that's the main reason why I went for Stockdale last season, because he plays for Wickham, and Wickham were obviously probably the worst defensive team in the league, which meant their goal was getting hammered, and Stockdale was able to make a number of saves. And 10 points per penalty save. We didn't have that last season, but if you were fortunate enough to catch a penalty save, you would be you'd be laughing. And yeah, if you were to put your captain on a goalkeeper, you wouldn't get 6 points per save or 20 points per penalty save. Just those points wouldn't double up. So Kyle, looking at these 6 boosts, if you were to choose the 3 that you would play in the first third of the season, which 3 do you think are the strongest?
Well, I'm all about upside when I play. I like to pick the boost that has the potential to get me the most points in a game week. So for me, those 3 are, of course, away days, trying to get the optimal number of away players that I can. Takes a bit of planning, but is rewarding because every player gets their points doubled when they play away. So that one definitely. I think I'll play Goalfest again. Those extra 5 points for a goal can be a big help to your overall points in a game week. And I find that, particularly with this season, with midfielders being, better to own. If you can own, 4 or 5 midfielders that regularly score, as well as 3, strikers with, good goal scoring record, you can easily get between 5 and 7 goals in a game week. So Goalfest would be my other, and my third one I think I will do a bit more digging on to find which is the best. And I think it depends on as well which game week you actually use the boost on. Some game weeks will be better than others. For example, like you wouldn't play you park the buzz when you have 3 forwards with good fixtures. because you'd need to bench two of them to optimise the ship to get the most amount of points possible in that game week. But Part the Buzz is another one that I'd like to use in the first block of 15 game weeks. So those three maybe, but I'll have a look at the fixtures and in more detail and try and plan around using boosts for sure over the 15 game weeks.
Yeah, I've not looked into the fixtures yet with regards to boosts, but they can get you an obscene amount of points, so they're really worth planning for. My current thinking, though, is away days should be a lock for everyone. It's going to be definitely I think it's by far and away the best boost. It's definitely difficult to plan for, getting 11 players all playing away at the same time. In fact, I think we got quite lucky last season in that when this came up, we were able to fill our teams with Norwich, Brentford, Barnsley, who were playing really well at the time, Swansea, and a couple of other teams that had good Gaffr assets. They were all playing away in the same week. It may not be that difficult, that easy this time, although I would just have to have a look at the fixtures to check that out. So away days is a lock for me. I think Park the Bus is also a lock for me, like Kyle said. Actually, no, you didn't say that. You said Goldfest, didn't you? But I think I'll play Park the Bus. It was another very strong boost last season. He did really well for me, especially with the half clean sheets. If all your defenders got a half clean sheet, that's 3 or 4 points as a floor when they've got good fixtures. So that could potentially be 20 points minimum gain from Park the Bus. But I know last season in one of my Park the Buses, I think I gained 39 points, although that was without subtracting the captains. So that's a lock for me. And then the third one is probably going to be between Jeepers Keepers and Goalfest for me. Overhaul is one you should play it if your team is in a real state. But if not, try your best not to play it. I only played one Overhaul last season when I could have played 3. But in the week when I did Overhaul, it was to attack a set of doubles. We'd kind of had a couple of small doubles. I think one small double around game 23. And then 2 big doubles in 27 and 28. So I kind of wildcarded, overhauled into those doubles. But that also happened to be the week when Tony scored about 5. I think he scored 5 or 6 goals in game week 27. And the guy who won Gaffr played Goalfest and had a massive jump on me that particular week. So that just went to show that if you can avoid playing Overhaul, do, because the other boosts, especially in this set, are really powerful. The first set of boosts we had last season didn't have things like away days, Jeepers Keepers, and Goalfest, which are really quite powerful. For me, it's the third one's between Goalfest and Jeepers Keepers, both of which are excellent in double game weeks, but there's a risk of them not doing so well in single game weeks. It only takes one bad week when you play your Goalfest and you might only get 1 or 2 goals. And Jeepers Keepers, while exceptional in a double, there was a Rotherham triple, in fact, where some people played that boost and got, I think it might have been 52 points. It was definitely around 50 points for Victor Johansson, the Rotherham goalkeeper. It's brilliant, that boost, because it makes the goalkeepers for the worst teams into point scoring machines, and I just love that. If you want to be getting in a potentially bad goalkeeper into your team for Jeepers Keepers, is that a play you then particularly want to be holding through afterwards? So there's quite a bit to think about. I think you could make a case for Goalfest or Jeepers Keepers or Overhaul. I don't think multi-captain is a particularly good option in this set. I think the others are just a bit more powerful. You're effectively only gaining points for your third choice captain and half of your vice captain points, which for me isn't enough to warrant playing it when you've got such other great boosts. So those are my early thoughts anyway on those.
Some very powerful boosts compared to what we had last season. I do wonder if we'll have the same boosts all the way through, or maybe they'll throw in some new ones maybe that have similar potential for point gain. But yeah, an important point to make is make sure you activate your boost when you want to play it. As I learned last season, I was busy at work on a bank holiday, and I didn't activate my goal fest when I wanted to, and lost a few points. But yeah, that's the advice I'd give anyway. Yeah, I think all 5 are good boosts to use. They all have similar average point gains. It just depends on when you use them, and yeah, trying to get the best out of those boosts. I'd recommend planning in advance a few game weeks to optimize using each boost that you choose to use. But yeah, the boosts are a massive plus, a massive tick in the Gaffr box. Yeah, in comparison to other fantasy games, I'm sure Joel agrees.
100%. Yeah, I love them.
Yeah, so I think that rounds up this first video of the Gaffr tapes, and yeah, thanks for tuning in and listening to us introduce the game to you if you're a new player, or if you played last season, to let you know the headlines from the changes to the game ahead of the season starting in August. So yeah, thanks for tuning in, guys, and we'll be back in a couple of weeks with a new video where we go into more planning in more depth. So thanks for listening, and thanks for joining me, and yeah, I'm looking forward to doing more videos with you in the future, Joel.
Yes, it was good. Enjoyed it. Yeah. See you soon, guys.